We're going to turn to election season. We are just 5 weeks away from the elections here in Virginia. Obviously, people can vote early now, and we've been covering the races, not just statewide, but locally, including the race for Portsmouth Commonwealth's attorney. And today we have incumbent Stephanie Morales, who is running for re-election after being in the role for 10 years, since 2015, correct?
That's right.
So thank you so much for being in here, for having this conversation on your campaign. Let's start with that, though, with just your record in general. You're from the area. You're from Portsmouth?
Yes.
Went to high school in Portsmouth?
Yes, absolutely. The great I.C. Norcom High School.
I hear you on that for sure. And then went to Norfolk State University.
Behold the green and gold.
And then for law school, where'd you go?
The College and William and Mary School of Law.
So let me ask you that just off the bat. Being able to be the Portsmouth Commonwealth's attorney in your hometown, that has to be something that means a lot for you. I'm sure did it factor into your first reason back when you decided to run? How's that been for you?
So it has been an absolute honor serving in the city that raised me. I take it very seriously that I'm tasked with an important role of keeping the community safe, but doing it the right way, in a way that is fair and equitable and that reduces harm to the community.
So with being in a decade, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if it feels like it's been a decade for you. I mean, because a decade is pretty, is a long time. What would you say that you've been able to change since you came into office? And what would you describe as your biggest accomplishments?
So when I started the process back in 2014, and then the race happened in 2015, I was very clear with my community that I was interested not just in prosecuting in the courtroom only, but that I cared about what happened in the community as well, addressing the root causes of crime by looking at reducing recidivism and engaging our youth in creating pathways for success. And so within 1 month of taking office, not only did I work on fairness and equity and ensuring that the office looked like the community, but I worked on developing sustainable programming such as Control Alt Delete, which is a reentry program that reduces recidivism, and also the Future Leaders Initiative to bring our youth into the system, having them see their brilliance and that they are the future leaders of our system. And so immediately I was able to impact the shape of what the Commonwealth Attorney's Office does for our community, ensuring that our community is involved. Because if you're not doing this job in partnership with the community, you're not going to hear the voices and see the impact of what the system traditionally has done to not only our entire community as a whole, but communities of color and marginalized communities. So it has been my goal to seek accountability, not just for members of our community, but also for system actors. One of the things that was very important is that within 1 month of taking office, I had an officer, within 3 months of taking office, I had an officer who killed an unarmed teen. I indicted on that case, I first chaired that case, and I prosecuted that jury trial, which resulted in a voluntary manslaughter conviction. And so that immediately showed the community that I was committed not just to accountability for the members of our community, but also for system actors, and that I hold myself to a different standard to ensure that justice is fair for everybody, not just those who have resources, but for our entire community. And as a daughter of this city, I take that very seriously and I take it to heart.
You mentioned community quite a bit in that,
Yes.
right? Accountability obviously is a big portion you think can make it to where community feels safe and definitely can trust. But let's talk about that trust in community and how you bridge that gap, particularly when you think about, I talk to other, prosecutors, witnesses, victims, feeling comfortable being a part of the process. How do you build, or how are you building community with your neighbors and with the people in the city of Portsmouth? How do you get them to trust?
Again, we have to have a relationship with the community. I am everywhere in our community. My job is not just in the courtroom. I am at community events. I am at engagement opportunities. I'm in our schools. I'm bringing our students into the office. I'm at the baseball field, the football field. I'm literally everywhere the community is. But also from a professional standpoint, I have a community relations administrator who it is her role and responsibility to be in our civic leagues and to be in the community as well, showing that we are committed to hearing the voices of the people who are impacted by the work that we do. And our communities have traditionally not trusted my profession. They have not trusted prosecutors. They have not trusted the justice system, because prosecutors and people in the justice system frequently are consumed with what happens in that courtroom. They are not thinking about the fact that witnesses are afraid when they come forward, that they live in community with perpetrators, and that fear is real. It is real, and it is something that we have to take seriously and provide resources for, and show our community that we are in partnership with them when they are engaging with our system. So it is a holistic approach to ensuring that we are working with our community, we are hearing their voices, and we are building that trust on a consistent basis in a way that is real. That engagement has to be real, because our community members are intelligent. They don't fall for antics. They don't fall for platitudes. They want to see real engagement, and they can feel it when it is real.
Let's talk about crime. We have to. Obviously, your office plays a big role in that, right? And so, in your opinion, what is the appropriate approach to address violent crime in Portsmouth?
So, number one, we can address violent crime in my office only in a reactive manner. That has to be clear. When something comes before our office, that means that a crime has already taken place. And we have a very important role when that happens. We have to be diligent and we have to be fair in our approach, but we also have to have the elements of every crime met. That means that if we don't have physical evidence, or if we don't have witness testimony, or people who are willing to come forward, those elements are not met, and we are not able to do our jobs. And so investigative quality is important. And we play a role in ensuring that we know that all of the elements are met when we are going forward to prosecute cases. But that being said, I cannot leave out the importance of addressing the root causes of crime. And we know that resources are not there in our communities in the way that they should be. We have to address housing insecurity. We have to address food insecurity. We have to address ensuring that the school to prison pipeline is not happening in our community in a way that is encouraging this violent behavior with our young people and people who do not have resources. We have to reduce recidivism. So again, that sustainable programming is important, because while we have a job to do in the courtroom, we have to acknowledge that when it gets to that courtroom, it is too late. Something has already happened and someone has already been harmed.
I heard you kind of allude to this early in that answer that you just gave. What are some of the challenges that your office runs into when you're trying to prosecute, and what are you actively doing to eradicate those issues?
So we are in a constant battle with people being afraid of coming forward. And that is nothing new. That is something that has been happening in our community and in communities around our nation, where witnesses do not feel safe and protected. And so that is something that I have spoken about frequently with several news stations, including this one, to talk about the importance of fully funding and actually creating a dynamic like the federal system with witness protection, where we can actually relocate people, where we can provide resources to remove them from the environment where they are afraid. Again, when we have crimes that are taking place, they are happening in people's communities. They are happening with people who they know. And so they are afraid, and rightfully so. We have to acknowledge their fear. We can't just expect people to show up in court and not worry about the repercussions for themselves and their families and their lives. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a result where we got a conviction in a double homicide and shooting. And we had a woman who was brave enough to come forward and talk about what happened to her and what happened to the two people who were killed in the incident that she was a witness in. She was brave enough to do that. But to say that she was unafraid, that would be really callous and a lack of understanding about what people have to go through who come forward. So when we have the witnesses who are brave enough to come forward, we are able to get justice, and we are able to see the results that have our community to feel safe. But we have to be willing to speak up about the importance of witness protection and the importance of ensuring that our victims and witnesses are supported when they come forward, because their fear is very real. But when we do not have the evidence, we struggle with being able to get the results that help our communities to feel safe.
And I believe you're referring to the case that involved the two twins, correct?
Yes,
and the
that's
woman
correct.
who said she played dead.
Yes.
Right? After
Yes.
being, I believe she was shot as well. The twins were
She
shot,
was.
and then she was, and she said she played dead in order for her to make it out there alive. And I know we covered that case too. A few of your critics have, and some of your opponents recently have accused you of not being in the courtroom enough, not being hands-on when it comes to these cases being prosecuted. What do you say to that?
So this role that I've served in for over 10 years is an administrative role. And to be clear, there are responsibilities attached with running a multi-million-dollar budget. And I am the only one in this race who has the experience of running this office. That being said, some of the most important and some of the most critical and high-profile cases that have happened, not just in our city, the Commonwealth of Virginia, but in our nation that have had national coverage, I have handled those matters first chair. So, for example, that matter with respect to the police-involved shooting, that was one of the very rare instances of seeing a conviction with a police officer who killed someone who was unarmed. I first chaired that case, not second chair, not taking credit for something that someone else did, but charging that case from the beginning, being a part of the investigation, handling the majority of the year's worth of pretrial motions, handling that jury trial, the opening statement, the closing statement, the rebuttal, being entrenched with our victim and his family, ensuring that everything was done right. That was something that I handled first chair, to set an example for my office and to show them what accountability looked like. Fast forwarding to during COVID, when there was a monument incident and we had several protesters who were charged unjustly when their First Amendment rights were challenged. I handled that case first chair with a number of other attorneys in my office to go forward before the court and share with them the lack of evidence and to dismiss those cases with prejudice. Those are instances where I have showed up on very important cases. But something that's less glamorous, within the past year, I had an attorney who became unavailable at the last minute, and rather than have my office scrambling and my attorney scrambling, I just went to court quietly and handled a full docket and was successful. And I know how to prosecute cases. And I prosecuted cases for over 4 years as an assistant on a day-to-day basis in all of our courts. So I know how to prosecute. It's not a problem for me to jump up and handle what needs to be done. But again, as the only one in this election who knows this role and having served in this capacity, I know that this is an administrative role. And so again, behind the scenes, I handle things that people don't know about that are less glamorous, but I also supervise many cases, all of our homicide cases, helping again to ensure that all of the elements are met. When they are not met, having the difficult conversations with our victims' families and making the appropriate determinations. And then when we see successes, even like within the last couple of weeks, I am a part of that process. So this is a supervisory administrative position, but when I need to show up in that courtroom, I show up and I do it well.
There have also been questions and concerns with some criminal cases over the last few years that have resulted in being dismissed. I know we've done reports on it and we've reached out and talked to your office about it, but the reason was due to either issues or miscues by prosecutors in your office. What do you say to those concerns, and what has the office done or is doing in response?
So we have discussed this, and I shared transparently that some of the decisions were made in response to the allegations were some decisions that we did not agree with respect to the court's decisions. I've been very transparent about that and very clear. But I will also say this: when you are dealing with humans, there will be mistakes. I will never say that my prosecutors are perfect. And when there is a mistake, we will be accountable. I will show up. I will talk about the issue. We will address it internally. We will take every measure that is available with us within the law to handle those matters. And then we move forward. We move forward with the spirit of equity, accountability, and seeking justice. And it is really something that I've seen, not just over the past 10 years, but over the past 14 years, that there are going to be mistakes. There were mistakes under the previous administration. There are mistakes under my administration. And there will be mistakes under any administration, because you are dealing with people and people are not perfect. And just like I believe in second chances within our community and with the members who come before the system, I believe in second chances if people are capable within my office. And so I work very hard to ensure that we do not repeat the same mistakes. But if there are mistakes that are made, we do what we can to be accountable. We do what we can to make the individuals who are impacted whole as much as possible and give them the respect that they deserve. But also accountability goes a long way. And I've never been afraid to address this publicly. And as you indicated, I've addressed it with you.
So in hiring your attorneys, what are some of the qualities that you're looking for?
There has to be a commitment to the same values that I hold. So when I'm hiring attorneys, they have to be committed to fairness, number one. We have a greater responsibility as prosecutors than just worrying about the case in front of us and the victims and the witnesses. We have to worry about the entire community, how that impacts our community, and even how it impacts the accused. So I'm very committed to hiring attorneys who share those same values, seeking fairness, seeking equity, and seeking justice. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is that I have career public defenders who used to be the ones representing people who were indigent, facing issues, who are now in my office, and some of them are in leadership serving as prosecutors. So they understand the importance of fairness and seeking equity, because again, this system has really been problematic for many, especially marginalized communities and communities of color, for as long as it has existed. So it's important to me to have people who share those same values so that I'm not in court watching people and being concerned about them being unfair to members of our community.
I've heard you use the word equity a lot.
Yes.
What does equity look like in a prosecutor's office? What does that look like in your line of work?
So that looks like looking at every single case, not as though it is a file, but understanding that there is a person who is impacted by our decision. And not just, again, we care about our victims. We care about our witnesses. They are impacted and we consider them, but we also care about the accused. And so finding the balance on every single case, looking at what is needed on every single case, remembering that although we come to the courthouse to do this job every single day, oftentimes members of the community who show up, when they come to the courthouse, it is the worst day of their lives. They are reliving something traumatic. They are reliving something that makes a difference to their lives, because they could either be facing, for those who are accused, incarceration, a disruption to their lives, or they could be facing something that impacts them differently. So everyone who shows up, whether it is a victim, a witness, or the accused, this is important to them. And so equity looks like evaluating the case and determining what they need. Is it incarceration or is it treatment? Is it something that requires diversion or is it something that requires restorative justice? So looking at every single case and not seeking equality and to treat everyone the same, but taking it a step further and seeking equity, where we're looking at what the needs are of all involved, balancing that and ensuring that we do justice in a way that meets the needs of everyone and that really reflects the values that we hold and that we want for our community, that we have to rise above and be better than what has happened and seek transformative change by going the extra mile. That takes energy. That takes commitment. And again, that speaks to the type of attorneys I want in my office, because they have to be committed to seeking equity, not just on a day-to-day basis, but on a case-to-case basis. Again, not seeing a file, but seeing the people who are attached to those files.
And listening to that response there, how do you go about making those determinations? I don't know if you have an exact example offhand that you can speak to where you had to look at a case and you had to make a judgment based upon the criteria you were just sharing and where you actually landed on. How do you go about making that determination?
So drug cases are good examples. When we have people who are in possession of drugs, narcotics, we could easily look at those cases and say we're going to seek incarceration, but oftentimes what we do is we look at whether there is an opportunity for a behavioral health court. So for example, we have a drug court treatment program that is very intensive, and we have seen people be very successful. When I was an assistant Commonwealth attorney, I was one of the attorneys who went to drug court every Wednesday to support the people who were engaged in that program, to clap for them for their days of sobriety and to encourage them. And so as a prosecutor, if you are standing behind people as they seek to better their lives and not come back before the system engaged in crime, criminal activity, that is something that the rest of our community can easily get behind. So drug cases are a good example where we look at those cases and we have to be better than just showing up to court and seeking incarceration, but looking at alternatives, something that can improve the lives of our community members, because again, we want them to be productive. We want their families to see them grow and move away from these behaviors that cause not just their lives to suffer, but their families' lives to suffer. We are dealing with a situation where when people are incarcerated, their education is disrupted, their jobs are disrupted, and their families' lives are disrupted, and it's expensive. We are spending more on incarceration in our nation than we are on education, and families are impacted by incarceration. So we need to reserve incarceration for those who are violent, who are harming our communities, and drug cases are a really good example where we need to ensure that if we're seeking incarceration, it's because someone is being harmed. But in instances where people are dealing with mental health related issues, drug related issues, we have to seek the appropriate consequence. Again, accountability is important. We are committed to holding people accountable, but what does that accountability look like? And how are we impacting our community in a positive way?
What's your philosophy on plea deals?
So plea deals are something that, if you hear the word plea, you automatically assume that there's something negative. But if you think about the way a plea deal is supposed to work, it is supposed to involve all parties. So the witnesses, the victims, and the accused should all be involved in that process. We have a victim witness program, and I have policies and rules in my office where the attorneys are supposed to engage with their victims and witnesses to ensure that they understand what the options are. And oftentimes, if they're not in agreement with pleas, we don't engage with them. We will go forward with trial, whether that means a guilty or a not guilty. We're comfortable with that. And so oftentimes when you do see a plea happen, it is because that is something the victims or the witnesses think is appropriate, and the accused thinks that that is their best option for being accountable, but also mitigating their exposure to a disruption in their lives. And so we take plea deals seriously because we want to ensure that it is reflecting a dynamic where all parties who are involved are engaged with that process and they feel that their needs are being met with respect to justice.
Let's switch gears a little bit to something I know that I am personally passionate about, and that's the number of youth that have been involved in crimes, whether being victims or the accused within them as well. What do you see as kind of being the spark for that? It seems like it's grown in recent years. And then what can your office or what can the community do to kind of bring that back down?
So I'm a mother of 4. And so when I think about youth being involved in the system, that is personal to me because I care very deeply about our young people, which is why we have sustainable programming, specifically directed not at doing a scared straight type thing, but ensuring that they understand, again, their brilliance and their ability to be the future leaders of our system. When we see youth impacted by crime, that is a symptom of our system failing to pour the resources into our young people in the way that we should. Oftentimes we see suspensions, and this is not something that impacts Portsmouth only. This is something that impacts our entire nation. We see a disruption in education, not attending school, being suspended, behavioral issues that, again, should be dealt with in a behavioral healthcare sense and not through the system. But what happens is when we disrupt education, and by 3rd grade, if you're not on par with the reading level, that is when we see a decline in engagement with school. We see a decline in attendance. We see behavioral issues. And if we have people who are not sensitive to those things, not willing to get our children help, not willing to get them psychological treatment, that is when they begin to act out. And instead of dealing with that in school, they're facing charges. And that happens disproportionately with youth of color. And so we have to look at the root causes. We can't skip to the end when our children are in high school and they're engaged in these activities. We have to look at the beginning. How far back can we go? We have to focus on early literacy. And these are things that prosecutors are not comfortable talking about, but I am. So I engage with our young people on literacy, the importance of knowing how to read, the importance of understanding how the rules in their school translate to the law, and engaging with them and trying to build them up to understand it and know who they are and how powerful they are. But once it gets to that point where our youth are system impacted, that is where equity comes into play. We cannot treat our young people like adults. Their brains are not fully developed. We have to do everything in our power to assess the situation and meet their individual needs. And yes, I say that as a prosecutor. Those who are charged, we have to assess and meet their individual needs as we meet the needs of our victims. And that is not easy, but this is not an easy job. And anyone who is signing up to do this job, the status quo that we've had in this nation, where prosecutors show up to court and they just prosecute, it is unacceptable. We are still in need of transformative change. And as long as I'm here, that is what I will be seeking. But we cannot expect for a change in our community, treating everyone in the same way and not working to treat our youth in the way that they deserve to be treated, which is in an equitable manner.
When it comes to prosecuting crimes in the city, do you have a certain prioritization? How do you prioritize the cases that you're looking at?
So, of course, we spend a great deal of time and energy on violent crime. So when we have murders, when we have shootings, when we have rapes, we just had a rape sentencing happen just yesterday. We prioritize those and we take them very seriously. But with that being said, even though low-level offenses, we take those seriously too. And we seek accountability. That accountability may look different. When we have someone who has stolen baby formula, we're not going to be seeking incarceration. We're going to be trying to figure out how we can get them resources. And I've had people say, is this the prosecutor's office or is this social services? This will be whatever our community needs it to be. We will engage in prosecution and we will engage in social services if that is what our community needs. So we have to pay attention to what the appropriate outcome is, and we pour in the resources accordingly. So we will be spending hours and hours viewing body cam footage and looking at the violent crime cases that we have and ensuring that the elements are met and ensuring that the investigation is of the correct quality and that it continues on if need be. But in other instances where we have to seek accountability in a different way, we reach out to our partners who are dealing with social services, mental health related services, behavioral health care, drug related treatment. We will do anything that we need to, and we spend the appropriate time based on whatever the situation is. But again, with the eye for equity and for justice and doing it the right way.
And how would you describe your relationship with police in the city?
So my relationship is this. I operate from a position of respect, and I expect respect in return. And that is really all that matters. If we are respecting each other, if we are all doing our respective jobs and we're straightforward about where we are, again, we have a magistrate system in Virginia. When you go around the country, cases come about differently. Other states have prosecutor intake units where cases are coming before the prosecutor's office for them to evaluate the investigation and the elements before those charges are being brought. Here in Virginia, we have the magistrate system, so the cases have already originated by the time they get to our office. So we have to be honest in a respectful way about what is there and what is not there with respect to the elements. And that is what we are working on doing with our law enforcement partners. And we are open to hear what their concerns are as well. And we've engaged in those conversations. As long as it is done in a respectful manner, that is what I'm seeking. I am concerned about my relationship with my community. And so if law enforcement are working diligently, if they are respectful of our community, if they are upholding the oaths that they've taken, they have my full support in discharging their duties. But if there is harm to our community, I'm going to hold them accountable, and I have a proven track record for doing so, and I'm unapologetic about that.
All right, my last question to you here is just giving you a quick floor here, maybe in a minute or less. For those who are watching right now, if there's something you have not shared, what are the reasons why you believe they should reelect you to be Portsmouth Commonwealth's attorney?
So for this past 10 plus years, and even before that, as I've been working in this office, it has been my goal to take a holistic approach to doing this job, not just trying to prosecute our way out of crime. We've seen the studies, and it shows that we are simultaneously over-incarcerated in dealing with too much crime. And so it is important to have someone who is going to be smart on justice, willing to take tough stances when the time is appropriate on violent crime, and also willing to be compassionate and ensure that we are doing everything that we can to address the root causes of crime. Sustainable programming is not something that is done to look good or be cute, but it is done to reduce recidivism and to engage our young people to ensure that they are on the right track. And so for the past 10 years, I've sought transformative change, and for the next 4 years, I will be seeking even more transformative change in partnership with community. I cannot stress that enough. We must be in partnership with our community, hearing their voices, ensuring that we are doing everything that we can to be fair, equitable, supportive, and present. Thank you.
All right. That is Stephanie Morales, the current Portsmouth Commonwealth's attorney seeking re-election. She has two other candidates who are also vying for the role. We had Steve Heretic on and also Nathan Chapman. They are all going for that seat in Portsmouth, with Election Day being on November 4th. Stephanie, definitely best to you, and good luck.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming in with us here today.
Thanks for having me.